Okay, so thank you again for joining JMT Consulting for our Expert Speaker Series. My name is Melissa Waters, and I'm the Manager of Events and Programs here at JMT. And we're happy to have Tony Martignetti of Martignetti Planned Giving Advisors talking to us today about demystifying planned giving, black box, no more. This webinar is sponsored by JMT Consulting. We are an ERP and financial management solutions firm with over 28 years experience, and we specialize in nonprofits. I want to share a few housekeeping notes, and then I'll introduce Tony and let him take it away. We are recording this webinar today. You will receive a copy of the recording as well as a copy of the slides. That should hit your inbox no later than tomorrow. I'd also like to tell you, if you have questions, there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You can click on that, submit your questions, and we will be answering those at the end of the presentation. And there's also a chat feature, so if you have any questions, can't see a slide, anything, please utilize that and let me know. Finally, I'd like to introduce Tony. He's been serving the needs of nonprofits since 1997. He consults through Martignetti Planned Giving Advisors. He's the host of Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio, the #1 podcast for nonprofits. His books are Charity Registration, State-by-State Guidelines for Compliance. For a much bigger laugh, you can catch him doing stand-up comedy in the New York City area. He gets quoted in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Chronicle of Philanthropy. He was in the Air Force during the Reagan years, and during that time, he controlled the keys to 10 nuclear missiles. But off-duty, those keys started his Toyota. So with that, please join me in welcoming Tony.
Hello, we are all involved in fundraising in one way or another. So that means we all understand the importance of the ask. If we're not asking for gifts, we are not going to be getting gifts. And I want to share with you the story of my very first ask, which was in 7th grade, when I had a terrific crush on Lisa Maggio, and I chose to ask her to go steady at our 7th grade dance. I was there in the gymnasium, with that high gloss varnish, poisoning everybody. I had on my powder blue leisure suit with the contrasting thread on the lapels. My shirt was a fine Kiana polyester. My shoes, blue plastic from Buster Brown. If there had been a fire, I would not have burned. I would just smoke and melt. I chose my last dance for Lisa. Lisa chose her last dance for Albert Moran. So I had the pain of watching that spectacle, the two of them. But when it was over, I went up to Lisa in the middle of the gymnasium floor, and I got so close to her that I put my hands on her shoulders, and I asked her, "Lisa, would you go steady with me?" With all her 7th grade charm and sweetness, she said, "You are standing on my dress." Years later, Albert and Lisa married. Then, sadly, they separated and divorced. I'm an attorney, and I handled that divorce. I handled it for Albert, and Lisa has been paying the price ever since. I want to welcome you to Demystifying Planned Giving, Black Box No More. Thanks very much for being with us. My thanks also to Melissa and everybody at JMT Consulting for hosting us this afternoon. Here is what we're going to be talking about to demystify this planned giving black box that I think confounds and intimidates a lot of people completely unnecessarily. So this is how we're going to get through it. What it is, who the best prospects are, how to get started. I've got some marketing tips that are quick and easy, and then a little continuing ed if you want to learn more. And then there will be plenty of time for your questions. So I'm encouraging you to be typing your questions in as they occur to you. We're going to take them all at the end, but please put your questions in as they occur to you. And then at the end, Melissa will be curating, going through, and we'll take them one by one. And could I ask you to, when you put your question in, give me your name, just first name and what city, state you're in. I like to shout out. So please give me your name and city and state too. But definitely put your questions in as they occur to you. Don't wait till the end. We'll be doing the questions at the end. So what is this planned giving? I have a pretty simple definition. This is a method of giving that requires a lot more thought and intentionality than an outright gift. And I don't care whether that outright gift is $50 or $500,000. There's more personal factors that weigh into a planned gift. People are thinking about how your charity can fit into their estate and retirement plan. And so that involves family also. How do you fit alongside their loved ones? So a lot more serious considerations go into a planned gift. And typically these are gifts that mean cash to your nonprofit at the donor's death. All right. That's certainly what we're going to be talking about. That's the type of gift we're going to focus on today. There are some gifts that are different, but they're much more technical and we're not getting into them today. So, you should be expecting a gift that would mean cash at the donor's death. And I do say death, I don't say passing on or the loss of, or, we're not past, we're not lost. We do die. People die, and people who put you in their estate plan, when they die, there can be a gift for you. And we're going to see how exactly very, very shortly. All right, so that's what this planned giving is and who the best prospects are. That first bullet is the most important. These are people who love the work that you are doing. We're going to come back to that. I'll come back to it a couple of times throughout. It's critical that, we're not acquiring new donors. This is definitely not acquisition. These are people who are deeply committed to your mission. And the way they show that is through their giving history. And that's how we determine who to promote to. So we're interested in age and giving history. I like to start planned giving promoting around age 55 or 60 roughly. I know there's been commentary, you see it occasionally, that people in their 30s and 40s even would be receptive to planned gifts if they were marketed to. The research I see comes from direct marketing agencies that usually are selling print materials or digital marketing services. So they have an interest in expanding the number of people you promote to. My concern about going that young, 30s, is that I'm not convinced that your charity is going to remain in their estate plan for the next 60, 70 years. That's a long time. Now, you might say, well, that's a stewardship issue. It just becomes it's a matter of responsibility, the charity's responsibility to do proper stewardship. Yeah, for 70 years, that's a lot of relationships. That's a lot of gift officers to go through, a lot of CEOs, and on the donor's side, a lot of life changes. So, in advanced years, like if your program is 10, 12 years old, then I could see maybe going younger than this, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about getting a planned giving program started. And I want to start with the people who are most likely not to remove you from their estate plan. And those are people who are roughly 60 and over. Okay, that's my rationale for that. 60 is roughly the age where people start thinking about their estate plan for charitable purposes. I mean, you should have a will and an estate plan long before 55 or 60. But that's roughly the age where people start thinking about it as a charitable vehicle. And that consistency of donors, the consistency of giving, that's how we donors prove their loyalty to our work. So we're looking for people who have made, depending how long your organization's been around, 10 or 12 gifts in the past 8 or 10 years. I mean, literally some people are giving a couple of times a year. If you're older, if your organization's been around 40, 50 years, you may have people who have given 50 gifts in 40 years or something similar to that. We're looking for really really committed donors, and I don't care what size those gifts are. Literally, I mean, if those, let's say there's 40 gifts in 35 or 40 years, if those were $5 and $10 gifts, that person is a good planned giving prospect. Do not discount those small gifts when you're querying for who you're going to be promoting to, who you're going to be promoting planned giving to. Tiny gifts count. It's the longevity and the consistency that we're looking for, not the gift size. The women's role in philanthropy, of course, on average, women outlive men. So in a typical hetero couple, the guy would die first, and he would leaving his wealth to his wife. And so you don't want to ignore the relationships with the women in the couple as you're doing your planned giving. And look to your board for leadership, because we look there for leadership in any new program, right? When I'm working with clients, I am meeting with boards, and I like to see, and I encourage there to be 100% participation. That's the one exception to the age. If you have board members who are under 60, they should have you in their will. If they end up taking you out years later, fine. But while they're on the board, if they're in their 30s, 40s, they should be including you in their will. We look for 100% participation on the board. So those are the prospects. I have 2 mandatory takeaways, and here's number 1. I hope you can read that. Is it clear enough that this is not only for your wealthy donors? This is for people of very, very modest means. Just like I said about the small gifts. This is for people who love your work. They don't have to be wealthy to put you in their estate plan. Okay, that's a common misconception. People think they look only for prospecting on their major gift list. Not true. Not only for your wealthy donors. People of modest means, there's a good likelihood they'd like to be doing more for you while they're living. That person who gave you $5 or $10 a year, or $5 or $10 many, many times, I would bet that person wishes they could do more for you. If they have the kind of longevity of giving and consistency that I'm talking about, they wish they could do more for you. And maybe they can. Maybe they actually can, objectively. But their perception is that they can't. They have a fear of outliving their assets. So in their mind, $5 or $10 is all they can do for you each time they make a gift. They are an ideal prospect for doing a lot more for you in their estate plan after their death. So mandatory takeaway 1. So how do we get started? How are we going to do this? I recommend highly that you start with charitable bequests. These are gifts in people's wills. The same will that has gifts to their husband, wife, children, and grandchildren, alongside all those dear loved ones, there's a bequest paragraph for your charity. There are a lot of reasons why I recommend starting with charitable bequests, and that's where I start with all the clients I work with. Always start with bequests. The number 1 reason is you should expect 3/4 or more of your planned gifts as you continue on in your planned giving fundraising to be charitable bequests. The vast majority of gifts are charitable bequests, those gifts in wills. So that's where I recommend starting. And so we're going to talk through this. If any of the astute among you may have noticed that the first letter of each word spells out JMT Consult, showing my gratitude to JMT Consulting, but I left out the ing. So we're not using the gerund form today, just JMT Consult. So some things are awkwardly worded a little bit, but I mean, the point comes through. So just don't expect to be told. The national statistic is that for every person that you know has put you in their will, there are another 7 to 8 wills or estates that you're not a part of, that you're not informed about, okay? That you're not a part of. For every one you're in, there's 8 that you're not in. No, for every one that you know that you're in, there's another 7 to 8 that you are in, but the people won't tell you. Why don't they tell you? They want to remain anonymous. They want to know that they can change their mind. And of course they can, because wills can be changed anytime. At any day you can change your will. But they feel that if they tell you, then they're morally obligated not to change their mind. And they don't want to take on that moral obligation. So they don't tell you. They may not want to be asked to do more. They don't want recognition. So those are some reasons why people won't tell you. As I had said earlier, this is the most popular type of planned gift by far. 3/4 or more of your planned gifts are going to be bequests. There's likely no deduction. The estate tax threshold now is 11.6, 11.5 or $6 million per person. So if for estates below that value at death, there is no estate tax. So there's no estate tax charitable deduction. But people aren't doing it for the deduction. Why are they doing it? They're doing it because they love your work. That's why they're including you in their estate plan. Don't talk about tax advantages. First of all, there's a tax advantage for very few people, as I just said, but that's not why they're including you in their estate plan. They're doing it because they love your work, and this is a natural extension of all that consistent and loyal lifetime giving that they did, and they're continuing to do, and they will continue to do. They're not going to stop making gifts to you once they put you in their will. In fact, quite the opposite. In a lot of cases, their giving will increase because they feel extra committed to you. I've seen that many, many times. I can't say it's a majority, but lots and lots of times people will increase their giving after they've included you in their will. The next two have to be read together. You can't believe it sometimes when you look back over the giving history, because you see these small gifts. You get notified that you're in an estate at the person's death. You'll be notified, and you go in your CRM and you look at their giving history, and you see the longevity and sometimes the small size of the gifts, and you find out you're in their will for $10,000 or $50,000, sometimes six figures. I mean, it's really astounding sometimes. It's moving to see the commitment when we're notified of someone's death. The average charitable bequest by the U.S., by the way, in the U.S. is between $36,000 and $37,000. So you can see that, you're not likely to be getting like $500 or $1,000 in a will. I've seen gifts that small, but they are far outliers. All right. The average, again, between $36,000 and $37,000 in the U.S. Non-wealthy donors love it because it's ideal for your modest donors, as I said in mandatory takeaway number 1, right? And so we understand why. It's easy for donors. Everybody needs a will. Everybody knows what a will is. You can give them a sample bequest paragraph, which I'm going to give you later on, to share with their attorney, and just drop it right in the will. So this is a very easy gift. There are some planned gifts that are technical, and we're not getting into those today, or I'm going to gloss over a few just to acquaint you very, very briefly with things that that I don't recommend you start your program with. But so we're keeping it easy. That's another reason to start with wills. Simple. Everybody knows what they are. You need to respect your small lifetime donors. That's kind of subsumed in what I said, right, about the importance of those donors to your planned giving program. So hopefully you are acknowledging gifts at every single level. $1, $5. Are you occasionally saying thank you to the monthly donors who are giving you $1 or $5? Not every month, of course, but those small dollar donations count. Likely property or cash. Yeah, that's what you're most likely to be left an outright bequest of a dollar amount. But property, it could be some kind of property that's left to you, either real estate or some other property, but anything of value can be left to you in someone's will. And finally, there's good value in residual estates. The residual estate is what's left after all the outright bequests, like maybe a $10,000 gift to nieces and nephews, and $100,000 gift to children. And after the expenses of death have all been paid, the funeral, burial, et cetera, or cremation, whatever. Or after all those expenses have been paid and all those outright bequests, what's left is the residual estate. And there can be a lot of value in a residual estate. Just because it has the word residual or, residue, don't think it's, pennies or a tiny amount of dollars. I've seen lots of estates where the majority is in the residual because the person didn't have a lot of outright bequests. Maybe they took care of all their loved ones while they were living, so they didn't leave much to them in their estates. Or, examples, never married, no children. And so there maybe are just some small bequests, outright bequests to friends. Sometimes you see that. Friends are left in wills. And then those expenses I was talking about. And then everything else is in the residual. So, and you can be left a percentage of that residual estate. So I don't want you to think that residue means a tiny amount. It does not have to. Okay, mandatory takeaway number 2. If you go no further than this, than charitable bequests, promoting bequests, ever, if you never go further than bequests, that is a very respectable planned giving program. You don't have to go any further than what we talked about now and what I'll be talking about some marketing tips on, et cetera. But you don't have to go any further. It's going to be the vast majority of planned gifts in every single program. I don't care if it's University of Texas, Stanford, imagine the biggest Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital. 75% or more of planned gifts in all those major institutions are bequests. So you don't have to go any further than those. That's the last of the takeaways. Mandatory takeaways, by the way. Hopefully it's not the last of the takeaways, but it's the mandatory ones, the one I insist on. Okay, if you should decide to go further, and this is where we're going to gloss over these things. If you decided to go further, there are some possibilities. Living trusts. These are trusts that are not set up for charitable purposes. People set them up to sometimes to make that after death process, the probate process, go a little quicker. Instead of a will, they have a living trust, or they maybe have both. You can be a beneficiary of a living trust. The IRA rollover, that's for the people who are over 70 and a half. It's also, the technical name is the qualified charitable distribution, but people know it as the charitable IRA rollover. That can be a decent gift. And I've had clients do well with that, but again, only for people 70 and a half and over. You could be a beneficiary of lots of different financial assets, life insurance, lots of checking and savings and brokerage accounts have payable on death or transfer on death clauses where they can name a death beneficiary or beneficiaries, and you could be one of those. And if you decide to go even further, there's charitable gift annuities. That's where your donors get income for life. And then at their death, what remains is a gift to you. Charitable remainder trusts, that's also life income to donors. And what remains is a gift to charity or a couple charities. Retained life estate, that's real estate. That's say a home that someone is living in and they pay the expenses while they continue to live there. And then at your death, at their death, that home they're living in is transferred to you. Charitable lead trusts, often used by the very wealthy to save on estate taxes and generation skipping taxes, skipping transfer tax. It's among the most technical. It's income for you, income to the charity, and then at the death or after a certain number of years, it is returned back to the donor or the donor's estate. All right, but we're just glossing over these things because we're talking about getting started, demystifying and getting started. So, but these other vehicles exist if you decide to go beyond bequests. So this is where we've been so far and what's coming up. You can see. I hope the questions are pouring in or trickling. I hope they're not just trickling. I hope they're pouring in. Please ask your questions, and remember to include your first name and city and state, so we can shout you out. All right, some marketing tips for planned giving. I'm picking on things that are simple, inexpensive, sort of quick. All right, you do not have to spend a lot of money to be promoting planned gifts and bequests. Actually, let me see. Yeah, let's focus on that. Today we're focusing on bequests. So you don't have to. It doesn't have to be elaborate marketing. You don't have to spend a lot of money. I'm like the evangelist for planned giving without the religious overtones of evangelism. I want there to be lots and lots more, many more charities, no longer intimidated by planned giving, but encouraged to get started with charitable bequests. All right, that's I want there to be a lot more planned giving programs and getting started with bequests. And that is, again, that's a program. If you're promoting charitable bequests, you've got a planned giving program. You may have a nascent one, you have a startup one, but you've got a planned giving program. And you may never go beyond bequests. And that's very respectable if you don't. So getting started with marketing events. You're already hosting an event. This is not a planned giving event. You're already hosting some kind of event. Can you put a few speaking points into the remarks? Like, along the lines of, we've kicked off a bequest. Sometimes I have clients who we caption it as a bequest campaign. You could do that. You don't have to. So we've kicked off a bequest campaign or just a bequest program. It's so easy for you to include our organization in your will. If you'd like some more information about doing that, please, talk to me at the end, or whoever your CEO points to you as the person to talk to at the end of the program. And same thing with your printed program. A little sidebar, just a couple of words. This is, it's easy for you to include us in your will. Here's I recommend you share your legal name, the way you're known through your incorporation in whatever state you're incorporated in, that legal name and your tax ID number and your address. Those three things, somebody can drop you into their estate plan, into their will very easily. They don't have to have your sample bequest. They just bring those three little points of information to their attorney. They can drop you in their will. Now, it may not be suitable for every event, but are there events where you can? Again, you channel me. You become the evangelist for planned giving in your office. There's an event coming up, doing a printed program. Somebody's writing remarks. Can we drop in a couple of sentences about planned giving? Can we get a little sidebar on in the printed program? All right, you be the evangelist for planned giving. In print, same thing. A sidebar. These do not have to be. Sometimes people think, I have to write 300-word article about the benefits of including our organization in your will. No, you do not have to do that. You can, if you're up to it, if you want to. You don't have to. Simple sidebar, 25 words, like I was just saying for the events. It's easier for you to include us in your will. Here's our legal name, tax ID, address. Thanks so much. It's very, very simple to do. So whatever print channels you've got, be promoting planned giving in them. Your annual report, that's an ideal place to recognize your planned giving donors. You may very well be recognizing other donors, right? We all go through that vetting of every single word, every single name. Is it spelled right? Is it at the right level? Did we count all the gifts? Did we count correctly? Right? You know what I'm talking about. So do the same for your planned giving donors. They deserve the same recognition that your outright donors get. And I guess this is an okay time. You have a recognition society for your other donors, right? At a certain level, whatever it is, you have a $500 society or $1,000, or depending on your organization, maybe you got you have 1,000, but maybe even have a $50,000 level. Whatever size your organization is, wherever your donors fall, you have recognition societies, categories for your outright donors. Do the same for your planned giving donors. They absolutely have a recognition society. And can I please avoid calling it the legacy circle or the legacy fund or the heritage society or circle or fund. Keep legacy and heritage out of it. Those are so ubiquitous and generic. I work with clients. I like to see something iconic to your organization. The founder's name, perhaps. Maybe the year of founding. I've done that with some clients. I worked with a college. They had the Bell Tower Society because the Bell Tower was an iconic fixture on their campus. You pick something that's iconic and recognizable, for your organization. All right. I urge you to stay away from the legacy circle. The Heritage Fund. It's, you get it. You get the idea. Digital marketing, of course, again, sidebars or articles in e-newsletters. Simple page on your website, nothing elaborate. Please don't go subscribing to the companies that sell canned pages. I know it looks like your site when you click over to theirs, but it's like calculators and encyclopedias on planned giving and how does a charitable gift annuity compare and contrast with a charitable remainder unit trust. Nobody wants to read that. Yeah, nobody wants to read that crap. Not at this level. 15 years from now, you can worry about subscribing to those things. Simple page. Like I said, I'm going to give you a sample bequest. You could put that up there. What do you want to focus on? The long-term value of a gift in someone's will to your work. What does it mean for your work to continue for decades and generations to come? That's what you focus on the web page that you're trying to fill up. And I would say you don't have to fill it up. If you can maybe do a pull quote from someone who has included you in their will already, that's ideal. A little pull quote testimonial, short. Keep it simple, please. Don't go subscribing and don't feel it has to be a full page of content. Of course, in any social marketing that you're doing, you want to link back to your planned giving page. Your email signatures in your organization. There's a little sample thing. You can include us in your will. Ask me how. Can you get people to put that in their email signatures? Can you do that for yourself? Here's a sample bequest. So for your website, all right, you can use this if you have some attorney, a board member or something who wants to modify it. They can have at it, but this will work quite well. And then there's a statement down at the bottom that your attorney can change it to a percentage of your estate, because the way I wrote it, it's an outright bequest, a fixed dollar amount. But it can certainly be changed to a percentage rather than a fixed amount. So, you're trying to give your donors a starting point, right? So if you want to put this in a sidebar or in a print piece or, some digital piece, email blast, you could do that. Again, I would recommend putting it on your website. This will work. And yeah, people's attorneys may want to change it themselves. If it's not somebody on your board, your donors are going back to their attorneys with this and let the attorneys change it, but it's a place to start, right? And it gives them the key information. It gives them your organizational name, your address, and your federal tax ID number. All right. I like to see those included. Can you get by without them? Without one, you could, but why risk it? I like there to be no question what charity we're talking about. So that's why I include all three. I recommend including them in the marketing that I was talking about. And that's why I include all three in this sample bequest. So have at it. Today's Thursday. Give yourself Friday and the weekend. You can start your planned giving program on Monday. Do you have authority over your website? Can you get this up? And then, of course, you got to point people to it. But I would say Monday. You could start planned giving for fundraising Monday. You start your bequest marketing campaign. Yeah. All right. Maybe Tuesday, but certainly shouldn't have to go to the middle of the week next week. Direct mail, when you're doing direct mail. Now, of course, you could do direct mail devoted to planned giving, but I'm trying to keep it simple and low budget. Yes, direct mail is very effective for planned giving, for charitable bequests. but I'm talking about simpler and less expensive. So this is a mailing that's devoted to something else. Can you drop a little buck slip in? You know, by buck slip, I mean those, when I do them, design them for clients, it's 3 on a page and they fit neatly into an envelope. So they don't increase your postage costs because it's just 1/3 of a page. And you might include that bequest sample that I just gave you, or you might just use the kind of message that I was saying for the sidebars, how easy it is to include our organization, you know, using your name, of course, in your will. You could also use the reply envelope when next time you are printing envelopes. How about on the back, on the flap of a reply envelope, right, that people are sending back to you? You put a little check off. I'd like information about including the organization in my will. You're printing the envelopes anyway, and so you know people self-select. Oh, and look at that. Look at that spelling error. That's egregious. How did that self-selection? Self-selection. Oh, I don't know. Okay. I don't know if there's a feedback. I don't know if you're all going to get a survey, but if you do, I would flag that. That's egregious. You should write that up in the survey. If JMT is going to send you a survey. Self-selection. Very bad. Sorry. Apologies for that. Flag it in the surveys. So this is everything we've covered, right? I have a continuing ed slide for you if you want to learn a little more. And then it's going to be time for Q&A. So I hope the questions are at least trickling in, but they should be pouring in. I hope we have some questions. Remember to include your name and your city and state. So if you would like to learn more, I have a bunch of videos on planned giving. This is the consulting I do, it's planned giving consulting. I have a bunch of videos at TonyMartignetti.com. Of course, on the YouTube channel as well, but it's my site, you know, just a consolidated source of everything I've done. Whole bunch of videos. I talk about relationships. I talk about getting started. You'll always see me talking about bequests as the place to start, right? Some pitfalls, you know, potential pitfalls, some other marketing ideas, lots of videos there. If you would like to read about planned giving, this book I recommend from Robert Sharp Sr., who I first learned planned giving from in 1997. It's a very simple book. Of course, it goes way beyond bequests, but everything it does explain is in very simple lay terms, right? This is not an advanced tome. So if you are looking for a book, if you're a reader, I recommend that book, Planned Giving Simplified. And I also, as Melissa said, I do host a podcast, Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio, big nonprofit ideas for the other 95%. That's our tagline. I stay true to that. Every show I produce is for the benefit of small and mid-sized shops. The other 5% probably could learn, but you know they feel they can't learn from podcasts. So I'm doing it for the other 95%. We've got over 13,000 listeners each week. It is the #1 podcast for nonprofits based on that, and also the longevity. Coming up on 10 years in this July. It'll be 10 years every single week. So show number 500 is coming up in July. But the show goes way beyond planned giving. I'm picking the brains of experts in lots of different fields. Yeah, all the fundraising topics, and that's enormous right there. But social media, marketing, technology, branding, communications, legal topics, social, some accounting topics even, but never technical, right? Always picking the brains of other experts for the benefit of small and mid-sized shops. And if you want to find out who the guests are each week, you can go to tony.ma/go capital email, and you can sign up and get weekly, one message a week. Every Thursday tells you who the guests are for that week. And it also has a link to my latest videos, those insider alerts. All right, so it is 40 minutes after the hour, which is perfect, right on schedule. I wanted to allow at least 15 minutes, but ideally 20 minutes for questions, and that is where we are. So Melissa, let's get started with the questions, please.
Perfect. So we already have a few questions coming in, and just a reminder for everyone, if you do have a question, there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your control panel. Just click on that and you can send them through. So it looks like we have a few questions from an anonymous attendee.
Okay.
First one, how can you start the conversation regarding the bequest?
Yeah. You're first of all, you have to make sure that you are talking to the right type of donor, right? They're the right age, and they're committed and loyal. All those things that I talked about early on under best prospects. So when you're talking to that kind of person, this just becomes a natural extension of their giving. Some along the lines of, a lot of people who are as loyal as you are have included us in their estate plan, in their will, or we've kicked off a program for people as loyal as you to include us in their will. We're encouraging gifts by will. Is that something you'd consider doing? You're not going to get hit on the head. They might very well say no. I'm not saying everybody's going to be open and receptive. Of course, some people are going to say no, but they're not going to be offended when you're talking to the right donors. Well, I guess at this point they're donors, but they're plan giving potential donors or prospects. When you're talking to the right person, they're not going to be upset or offended. Okay, that's a common misconception. They'll tell you whether that's something interesting to them, and for those that is interesting, or I would consider it, you go to the next step with, can I offer you a sample bequest, or thank you so much for considering doing that. Of course, it means a lot to us because you want to remind them how grateful you are. What are they doing? They're including you alongside husband, wife, children, and grandchildren in their will. That's a pretty high honor. So you want to recognize it appropriately. Okay, anonymous. All right, you wanted to be anonymous? Okay, that's okay. I can't shout you out, anonymous. Okay, what's next?
We have two more by anonymous.
Okay.
Should we include planned giving in our capital campaign?
I believe, yes, you should. Now, it's a startup. I'm going to presume that this is a startup planned giving program. For more mature programs, I've worked in campaigns where we're responsible for like 25 to 30% of the total campaign goal. At a startup program, that's not likely. So yes, you should include it. It wouldn't be a capital ask, though. These are gifts that are more likely for endowment, because if your capital plan is 2 years or 5 years, even a 60-year-old includes you in their will, they're going to be living another 30 years, very conceivably, maybe even 40 years. So bear that in mind. This is not going to fund your capital plan, but it could be part of endowment for the maintenance of your buildings, facilities. But yeah, I would certainly include it. It also, it gives you another variable to include in your solicitations. So now you're not just asking for an outright dollar gift, but you're also asking for a potential gift in the person's will.
Got it. Next question, how do you determine the success of a planned giving program?
Determining success. Hold on for me 1 sec. Just getting a little stuffy. Had to open the sliding door. Determining success. Well, your metrics are not going to be initially. They're not going to be dollar amount. So, what's a reasonable goal based on the size of your organization for number of new bequests in the first year, or 18 months, or 2 years? Give yourself some time. But even in the first year, half a dozen, is that reasonable for your organization? So I would set a goal for number of new bequest intentions that you get informed about. Another potential goal is number of solicitations. How many people have you solicited for a gift by will, right? Okay, so there's a couple of easy first year metrics.
Excellent. Here's another question from Kim F. in Texas. You mentioned not using the words heritage or legacy. If you've already started something that includes that verbiage, how do you go about changing that?
Okay, Kim, in Texas. Thank you for your question, Kim.
Yes.
See how gracious I am. I love to shout out. See, thank you, Kim. Okay, so I assume you're talking about in your recognition society is already called the legacy or the heritage or something. You know, maybe a subtle change like here's how I would go about it. Think about what your alternative is, and then add that in. So let's say you were going to do your founding year. Let's say your organization was founded in 1975. All right. The 1975 legacy circle. So you're adding in the year, and then maybe in the next year you just phase out the word legacy. So it goes from legacy circle to the 1975 legacy circle, 1975 circle. That's I think that's a pretty reasonable way of doing it. Subtly, yeah, I would go about it that way. Look, if your organization, if your CEO doesn't want to change the name, then don't fret over it. It's not the end of the world. It's just I like to see things that are iconic and unique, and not so generic and ubiquitous.
Got it. Thank you, Tony. I don't have any other questions just yet, so we're going to keep it open. But I do. Melissa has a question herself.
Okay, Melissa
from
Austin, Texas, please.
From Austin, Texas. How important is it to talk about the donor's legacy in marketing materials?
It's not. It's not very important. Your legacy. The donors, your average donor, which by which I mean anybody who's not ultra high net worth, which is the vast majority, obviously, they don't think of their legacy. They're thinking of just supporting your organization. They're not concerned so much about what their legacy really at all. In terms of philanthropy, they're not concerned about their legacy, how they'll be remembered. That's for folks who have Wikipedia pages and are concerned about such things. So you don't have to mention their legacy. Donors just don't think in those terms of what their legacy is going to be. They just want to help your organization for decades and generations to come. And that's what you talk about. As I said earlier, you focus on the long-term value to your organization of gifts by will. What is it going to mean for your organization to continue its work for decades? What's that going to look like? What more will happen? That's what you focus your marketing and your promotion around, not putting it back to the donor and their legacy. People, I've had thousands of conversations with people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. I've never met with someone over 100, but in all those thousands of conversations, I can't even remember when legacy ever comes up. People just don't think in those terms. That's actually, I have a video on that. It's called The Legacy Fallacy. It's at my site at TonyMartignetti.com. The Legacy Fallacy. I think that's something that fundraisers impose on people who are 60 and over, and it's a fallacy. So, don't focus there.
All right, thank you. So I don't have any other questions that have come in. So again, I'm going to leave it open for a little bit just to see if anybody does have questions. Tony, if they think of a question, say later today when they're thinking more about the presentation you just gave us, is there an easy way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can email Tony at TonyMartignetti.com, or you can just use the contact page at TonyMartignetti.com. Either one gets to me. And yeah, people will be thinking about it because they're going to be kicking off their plan giving program on Monday or Tuesday. So there's going to be a lot of thought. Yes.
There's some homework for the weekend. All right. I'm going to leave it open just a little longer. So if anybody
Okay.
has questions, please ask us. We'd love to answer them.
I could use these couple of minutes to say a little bit more about stewardship. Um, thanking your donors. I emphasized how important it is to say thank you because of the respected position they've put you in, right, alongside their dear loved ones, their closest family. There's a gift for you. So going forward, some good stewardship ideas. You want to treat them like insiders. So are there publications, maybe, whether print or digital, whatever, that you share with major donors? I would share those with your planned giving donors too. They deserve to be insiders. They've got you in their will. Again, you be the evangelist for planned giving in your office. If there's an event and you're doing a VIP reception, pre-event or post-event, can we also get the planned giving donors invited to that? Those are ways of, expressing your gratitude without having to say thank you explicitly. But, you're treating, like I said, you're treating them as insiders. As your program grows and you have more and more people who are in your recognition society, if you're a local organization, or if most of your donors, let's say, are in a community or in one state, even, maybe you can start to host. Then you could start to host a planned giving event, something devoted to your planned giving donors, or maybe a reception piggybacking on some larger event, and the reception is just for your planned giving donors. VIP, right? VIP reception, VIP seating at some event that you're already hosting. Can you carve out a table or two for your planned giving donors? People appreciate that. They recognize that you're extending yourself and you're inviting them. So these are long-term gifts, and so you want your stewardship to be continual.
So we have another question that came in. Again, it's an anonymous attendee.
Okay.
Everybody's shy today. How do you balance politely suggesting bequests to valued current donors without risking offending them when approaching a sensitive topic such as death and mortality? Is losing the donor a risk to consider?
Could you read that one more time, please, Melissa?
Sure. It says, how do you balance politely suggesting bequests to valued current donors without risking offending them when approaching a sensitive topic such as death and mortality? Is losing the donor a risk to consider?
No, you're not going to lose the donor. I mentioned that earlier. People will not be offended when you're talking to the right kind of potential donor, right? The right age, and they have the giving history that we talked about. They are not going to be offended. You're not going to lose them. So, there isn't, you do have, it is a sort of a sensitive topic, but I disagree with part of your premise there that you're talking about death and their mortality. You're not. You're talking about the long-term viability of your mission and how a gift in their will is a natural extension of all the years of lifetime giving that they've done. It's just a natural progression from all that giving that they've done. So you're not focused on their death and mortality. Is that implicit in the conversation? Sure, but everybody understands that, and you don't have to make it explicit. Yeah, they're not going to get offended. They're not going to stop giving to you if you ask them for what is just a natural progression of all the giving that they've been doing through the years.
Great, thank you, Tony.
Sure.
That looks like all the questions that we have so far. So, Tony, if you're open to staying on for just another minute or so, we can leave it open, and if not, we can wrap it up and let everybody get back to work.
No, I'm open. We're good till the top of the hour.
All right. Keep the questions coming, everyone. These have been great so far.
All right, I should be able to think of, certainly I'm doing this long enough. There's other topics we can talk about, but sticking to, within bequests. I talked about what you could potentially get. Yeah. If you are left a gift in a will that you don't want, what if somebody leaves you a, I don't know, an antique car, but it's really more of a rundown car than an antique. You always have the right to turn down gifts in wills. The technical term is to renounce. You're renouncing a gift, and it varies by state, but you typically get like 60 or 90 days from when you're notified that you can exercise your right to renounce or turn down a gift if you don't want it. Now, those are rare. I mean, we're talking about like 0.5 of 1% or something, of gifts that are just not valuable. The vast majority of gifts are enormously valuable, and the vast majority of those are gifts of just outright dollar amount, either outright dollar amount or a residual dollar amount. And remember, I made the point that residual is not necessarily small. But so in case there's any fear that you'll get a gift that you don't want or can't use, you do have the right to turn those down. As I said, renounce those. But the likelihood of it happening is quite small. But, just in case it comes up in your office. How to persuade, how about this, talking to your board or your CEO, trying to make the case for starting this bequest campaign on next Monday or Tuesday. Well, first of all, a lot of charities are doing it, so your competition is doing it. It's a natural progression for donors. Why should their giving end at their death if they've been so loyal? Why should it end there? Let it continue. Give them another method of giving. It's, as I said, it opens up another variable around in your solicitations, so you're not just asking for a dollar amount, or maybe you're asking for a dollar amount, and join our board or volunteer in some other capacity, but you're opening another variable. And we're asking also for a gift in your will. You're opening up another variable. You can discuss. You can talk about if they come back with some objections. You can talk about putting more in the will, or less. More in the will and less outright, without compromising your outright needs. Also, so that's another potential argument to your board or CEO or whatever, vice president, whoever you have to persuade up above. It's just enormously popular. There are so many charities encouraging planned gifts. You really should be in the game. Again, why should your donors' giving stop at their death? There's no reason. There's no need for it. It's a simple way of giving. Those things you can use. Some of those things I said on that bequest slide. It's easy. Everybody knows what a will is. It's simple for donors to do. These are all potential reasons that you can give those who you have to persuade back in your office.
All right. Well, that is the top of the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Tony, thank you for your time today and this wonderful presentation, and we want to congratulate you on 500 podcast shows coming up.
Oh, thank you.
I want to thank everyone else for joining us today, and you can find future webinar topics that we have by visiting jmtconsulting.com and clicking on our events tab. And again, you'll get a copy of this recording by the end of the day tomorrow. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.